a very good afternoon, and we shall start the webinar in next 2 minutes. Thank you so much, everyone. Hello, everyone. Very good afternoon. So before I start, if anybody can let me know I am audible and clear.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So yes. Hello all, a very good afternoon, and myself, Ekta Dubey, on behalf of the Branalytics team and our partner, TigerGraph, we welcome you all and thank you so much for being part of our webinar, which talks about impact of technology on pharma, connect, analyze, and learn. So before we start the webinar, there are a few guidelines that I would quickly like to highlight. Requesting all the attendees to be on mute while the speakers are taking the session. Of course, we're going to encourage a lot of Q&A today, and requesting all the attendees to raise your hands, unmute yourself, introduce yourself about your company and your designation, and put your question to the concerned speakers. We have a keynote sessions and we have a panel session as well, where we'll have thought leaders answering all the questions. So before we start, I am happy to introduce our partner, TigerGraph. TigerGraph is a platform for advanced analytics and machine learning on connected data, based on the industry's first and only distributed native graph database. TigerGraph's proven technology supports advanced analytics and machine learning applications such as fraud detection, anti-money laundering, AML, entity resolution, customer 360 recommendations, knowledge graph, cybersecurity, supply chain, IoT, and network analysis. The company is headquartered in Redwood City, California, USA. So now, to start with the first interesting keynote, I would like to invite Mr. Ganesh Ramchandran, Global CIO with Elcom Laboratories Limited. And he is here with us today to share some interesting and strategic insights on changing dynamics of Indian pharmaceutical industry current trends. Mr. Ganesh, thank you so much for taking out your time and being with us today. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Ekta. I'm going to try and share my screen, so just let me know if you can see it. Can you stop sharing your screen, please?
Yes, yes.
Can you let me know if my screen's visible?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, great. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being here today afternoon. Over the next 15 odd minutes, I will try and cover what we are seeing in terms of an increasing footprint of digital in pharma. The last couple of years have been very exciting, but I would think even prior to that, there's been a lot of changes that we've been seeing with digital taking or increasingly coming to the forefront in pharma. So what we'll try and cover over the next 15 minutes today is we will talk a little bit about what are the key drivers that are driving the footprint of digital to really increase. We'll cover use cases which are cutting right across the value chain. We'll talk of some of the technologies that are gaining prominence in the pharma sector. We'll cover what are some of the key success factors that you need to make digital work. And lastly, I will try and lay out a roadmap on how I have typically gone about looking at evaluating initiatives and taking them on as I get onto them. So that's broadly what we'd look to kind of go through. So digital has really come into the forefront of this, and a study by McKinsey, which came in, I think about a few months after the pandemic hit in 2020, towards the latter half of 2020, what it came out with was it said that most executives thought that their companies responded much faster to the crisis on multiple areas than what they thought was possible before. So if you see over here, what you'd find is you'll see that the expected time that people thought it would take for making some of these changes, whether it was increase in remote working, whether it was increasing use of advanced technologies, handling changing customer needs, the actual time that it took was a factor of almost, it was accelerated by about 30 times compared to what it was or what people thought it would be earlier. And the reason for that, and it's not that suddenly digital gained prominence, right? Digital was always there earlier. So what was it that really kind of caused it? To my mind, there were three things that really came in, which made this change a much faster change than what it was earlier. The first one was that as we saw changes that were coming in, people realized that you could not do it unless you had digital adoption that was coming in, which led to a lot more digital adoption that really started. Most of these were business priorities. So, what that meant was the boundaries that were there between technology and functional areas started blurring. The CIO or the CIO's team needed to understand functional areas as much as the functional teams needed to understand what was possible with technology, because you were jointly problem solving. And because of what we've been seeing and the benefits of what we've seen as coming across with digital coming in, I would believe that the changes are really here to stay. So what are some of the key drivers of digital? The first, and we spoke a little bit about this on the first slide, is the business requirement. What does your business really want? Are you looking to grow your revenue faster? Are you looking to reduce costs? Are you looking to get a better compliance posture? Are you looking to improve experience? These were the typical value drivers that are there from a business requirements perspective. But what has got added on, I think, post the pandemic has been the next 4 points that you see. The first is the need for flexibility. Given that the requirements are changing and changing fairly constantly, how do you have your systems being flexible enough to be able to take it? If I take an example of Salesforce, and most of your teams have sales teams that are there in your organizations, each division has a different rhythm of their business depending on the therapy that they kind of go after. So your systems need to be flexible to be able to cater to differing requirements. Also, given that requirements come up fairly rapidly and you're looking at it being a competitive advantage, you need to have agility in the way you're able to come up with how you respond to those requirements that are changing. And while you do it, the expectation is that there are hardly any errors. It comes through literally error free. And lastly, collaboration. We spoke about saying that the boundaries are blurring. How do you improve collaboration across the organization is, I think, something that you would be looking at. So net net, if you are looking at saying that how do I look at what is the digital footprint that I undertake for my organization, I think the first question you should be asking yourself is, what are your key drivers? What are the key business requirements that your people are really going with? And for that, the voice of your customer is typically a great starting point. Talk to the different functional heads, talk to your different process owners, understand what are they grappling with, and figure out where can technology really start playing a role. What I'd like to kind of cover are use cases across the value chain. I have taken select use cases. I'm sure there are many more that are there, but I have seen a lot of these gaining prominence or gaining traction across the industry, and that's what I'm going to be highlighting. I will not delve into each of them. There are many of them to cover, but I will cover a couple of them just to give you a glimpse of what we are talking about. So if you look at procurement, and I think this is an area which everyone has been looking at, especially with the last couple of quarters where we've been seeing an increase in the input costs. How could you have a better supplier collaboration? How can you make sure that you have a lot more automation coming in right from your procure to pay processes? And the big one really, given that many organizations have undertaken the automation of procure to pay, what can you do with spend analytics? How can you track what are you paying currently? What was it a little while earlier? How much of difference is there? What impact does it have on your margins? These are all the kind of things that digital cases are kind of throwing out, and hence where else can you kind of compensate is something that's really coming across. The second area, I think this is fairly common, given that you're looking at saying that a lot of new drugs are to come out and you're looking at an R&D pipeline, the use of AI, ML in drug discovery, and a lot more, I think, where a focus is starting to go on saying, how can I have an end-to-end R&D project tracking? Most of us know that our current R&D projects take anywhere of 2 years and upwards for a complete drug to come out, and probably even longer. How do you kind of look at having a closer tracking of the R&D pipeline and ensure that there's a better rate of success, along with making sure that you have a lot more closer adherence towards the budgets that you're kind of looking at and lesser molecules falling by the wayside? I think that is where you're looking at a lot more AI, ML, and project tracking kind of coming together. If you look at the supply chain, of course, this has been an area where, given the huge variability in demand that most organizations saw over the last couple of years, there's been a lot more strengthening of the S&OP processes, whichever are the tools that you kind of use. Having a strong visibility on your inventory, making sure that you don't get stocked out so people have drugs available at the place where they need it is, I think, a strong thing that comes across, coupled with supply chain analytics. If you look at manufacturing, there's been a lot of interest in Industry 3.0. I still believe that we are fairly nascent on Industry 4.0, though people have started scratching the surface over there. So whether it is things on IT, OT integrations that you're looking at, whether you're looking at warehouse management and trying to say whether I'm using RFID barcodes, whatever is the kind of thing you're kind of taking on there, and linking it back with saying, how does this whole thing flow? Where do I know where it is going through? And how do I ensure preventive maintenance is taken across to have a lot more uptime and better yields, I think, is what you look at on the manufacturing and analytics side. On distribution, till earlier, I came in from a different industry a few years ago. I had consulted for many years, if you see my profile. And for the life of me, I didn't understand why is it that pharma reps had to go to a stockist to pick up orders. I think the pandemic forced people to kind of move and ensure that you provided a stockist a system by which they could punch in their orders rather than you having to do it or someone going and manually taking it from there. And also the whole thing of saying that how do you drive your stockist engagement? How do you ensure that your transport management is a lot better? Because currently people are looking for saying, I have placed an order, where is it? How soon is it going to come in? So I minimize the time it takes for me to get my stocks and to be able to drive through with it. But the biggest place that I think you have seen a lot more digital kind of coming in has been in the front office, particularly in sales and marketing. This has been an area where we have seen a lot of initiatives coming across, starting with doctor engagement. And I would go even one step before that. Many of the division organizations did not have clean doctor databases or did not have a strong enough doctor database with enough fields where you could profile doctors and engage with doctors. That's been something that many organizations have taken on to say that we want to start engaging our customers, our doctors a lot better. How can we really get across to it? Coupled with it, also with the sales force that we look at, particularly in the Indian context. How do you drive engagement of the sales team, given that there is large attrition that happens in the front, on the frontline teams? And how do you make sure that you give them enough amount of nudges, motivation to go and make sure they hit their targets? And how do you have that being customized and not a one size fits all? That's been the part that I think we've been looking at a lot more around sales and engagement analytics. Secondary sales is something that some organizations have started tracking. If you look at Alchem, for instance, in our quarterly reports, we kind of publish that. What we look at getting from there is we look at what are the things that are out of stock at different stockists, which are stocks that are nearing expiry, so we can work with the stockist to improve the ROI that they are able to kind of get and what we provide them. We spoke a little bit about the field team engagement. Telemedicine is again an area that has grown leaps and bounds over the last couple of years, while it's probably kind of moved back a little now, given that most doctors are back at their clinics. We have seen a fair amount of traction coming through with this. Alchem was one of the first companies that launched a platform for doctors to set up a virtual clinic. It is called Connect to Clinic, and it currently has over 30,000 plus doctors on the platform. I think cumulatively over the last year and a half, we've done over 100,000 consults on the platform. And what we are moving on that is we're moving away from a telemedicine, which is what, I mean, initially while we started with some of the telemedicine areas, we are looking at it as a lot more of an engagement tool for doctors to engage their patients. And that's the way we've been seeing the whole platform growing. So doctors are looking to say, how do I work much more closely with my patients, just as we are looking to work a lot more closely with doctors. The other couple of areas that we have seen has been around HR. I think that's been a huge area that we've been seeing a lot of traction on, around improving the employee experience, around saying how could we have a lot more collaboration coming in, strengthening the entire process, starting from onboarding for people who are coming on, given that in many cases you do not have a face-to-face induction that happens, face-to-face coordination that happens, and given that many of it is in the online world, how do you strengthen that whole process and allow it to kind of go through, because many of the younger talent that's coming in would like to see systems which are a lot more easier and gives them a lot more visibility and can do a lot more self-service. And of course, the big one on IT itself. I think one of the biggest areas that I have seen over here has been on the cybersec investments that we've seen over the last couple of years. Most organizations have, as we have looked to increase the digital cases in pharma, I think cybersec is an area where we have seen a lot of interest kind of coming in. You name the kind of things, I think most organizations are kind of taking and playing on with it. But of course, it is not just about the tools, as most of you are well aware. I think the bigger challenge in cybersec is insider threats. And how do you make sure people are aware so that they don't unwillingly start giving out things or unwittingly start giving out things that they are not supposed to be giving up. So these are some of the use cases that I think have gained a lot of prominence in pharma. Some technologies which are backing up many of these use cases coming to life. Automation, RPAs, I think these are fairly standard. You see many of it kind of coming in. And when you talk of automation, I don't think it is automation just in a particular function. You're looking at it cutting across multiple areas. How do you integrate across different systems? I think that's been the key of what you've been looking at. Given that a lot of automation has happened, people have started moving on to saying, how can I get a lot better data governance and analytics coming on top of it? So whether you're looking at data lakes, whether you're looking at having a better amount of BI coming out of it, having a lot stronger amount of descriptive and moving on slowly towards a prescriptive, predictive kind of models, I think that's something we've been seeing a lot more. We spoke about IT/OT integrations and cybersecurity. But I think for doing all of this, one of the big things that we've been seeing is how could the core infrastructure be strengthened? Many of the pharma companies have legacy systems that lie with them, including infrastructure. And if you need to kind of operate on higher capability systems, you need to obviously strengthen the core infrastructure too. I am moving a little faster because I realize I'm keeping an eye on the clock and I've realized I've got a few more minutes left. So I'll just cover a little bit about what makes digital transformation successful. Many of us run digital projects, but there was a study that BCG had done last year, and that threw up a statistic which was quite interesting. What the statistic said was that over 70%, I'll repeat that, over 70% of digital transformations were failures. And this was not just in pharma, this was across industries. So the question really is then, how do you ensure that your digital transformation is not a failure and it's a success? The first is you really need to make sure you align with your business strategy. So digital and business are not two separate strategies. They need to be closely coupled together. And for doing that, you need to ensure that whatever are the business priorities, you make sure that the technology kind of aligns with it. We don't take technology for the sake of technology. We do it because we are seeing a business imperative and that technology is going to help us achieve that business imperative. The second part is we talk about top management commitment. I think that's necessary, of course. But if you want to make the change succeed, you've got to have commitment across management levels, not just the top management, but also mid management and on the front line, which in many of the cases is executing the change for you. You need to have that buy-in. You need to get them to also understand why this is important. So a lot of communication, a lot of change management initiatives, driving things on saying that how could we incentivize champions who are really driving the change well, get people to realize why this is important, and getting them to do it is, I think, very, very critical for making the digital transformation successful. The third, and I can't emphasize this well enough, you need to really have a crack team. Today's case, when you're looking at putting in any digital transformation initiative or even any digital initiative, you need cross-functional team members to come in on it. And many a time what happens is the person who is free is typically the one who gets assigned for it, not necessarily the best person for the job. You need to ensure the best person on the job is put in on it, and that you also carve out career paths for these people along with reward and recognitions that match. When we are saying that it's a crack team and a critical initiative, put your money where your mouth is over there. We spoke a little bit about all of this, that you need to have flexible, agile platforms, data that can be shared across so that people see one single view of the data. And lastly, when you're running any project, for it to be successful, you need to have strong governance and monitoring. It's not saying that I'm going to look at a cost saving and I will get it after 9 months. You need to have leading metrics which are showing you whether you're on the right track 3 months down the line, 4 months down the line, and so on and so forth, till you finally hit that goal of saying that at 9 months, I have got this. So these are some of the things that I believe you need to have to make your digital transformation successful. And lastly, if you're looking to embark on a digital journey, here's a 4-step approach that I find very useful, which I typically take on. Maybe you'd find it too. The first is, we spoke about understanding what does your business need. We spoke of the voice of the customer. So define your objective, understand what are you trying to do, and get this aligned with the business teams. This is not an IT project. This is a project that's being done with the business teams very closely. So the objective has to be clearly owned across the organization. Second, understand where you are. What are the challenges that you're likely to see? What are the kind of capabilities that you need? What are the kind of things that you need from an infrastructure perspective? Assess your as is very clearly, because you don't want to start on something and then figure that you've not thought of one area, and because of which you're kind of getting pulled back. Look at the options that you have got for how you do it once you assess where your as is. So you could have multiple options. I have always believed that a best practice is not necessarily the right practice for you. So figure out what is the kind of thing that will work for you. Maybe a best practice is something that you'll gravitate to later. But for now, there is an option or an intermediary option that you need to get at, which is what would make more sense. And lastly, once you do have it, assign the resources, execute ruthlessly, and check whether you have hit your objective. This was about all that I kind of wanted to cover. I realize I've overshot by about a minute or so. Thank you for indulging me on this. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, please connect with me on LinkedIn. Be the change. Thank you so much, Charmaine. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ganesh, for sharing wonderful insights. We have an interesting question from Lekha Satish. She's asking, how does a telemed platform work? Lekha, do you want to yourself elaborate it if you want to?
No, first of all, Mr. Khanna, that's a wonderful presentation. Very, very innovative initiatives to talk about. And I found that what you mentioned about where you're providing a platform for the clinicians to have their own private virtual clinic. That's been very interesting. So just wanted to hear more on what is that about.
So what we provided, Lekha, was we gave, so around March of 2020, we went across to about 2,000 doctors and we asked them, where would you like us to help you? And what they told us was they were very worried about how patients were going through in their entire journey. And they wanted to be able to connect with their patients to make sure that they were healthy. And given that you had the clinics closed and patients also are probably not able to come, some cases, doctors were not able to come. What that meant was you need to provide a virtual clinic for them. So what it started was an ability for a doctor to provide, and pretty much similar to what you would find in many of the other ones, right? So you have a calendaring solution, which says that the doctor can lay out which are the slots, what the doctor is going to charge for the slots. What we also came up with was very similar to what you do in the offline world, which is that you allowed the doctor to say, is it a first-time consult, I will charge differently. A follow-on consult, I will charge differently. You allowed different therapies to take different time slots if they needed. So what we figured was a psychiatrist would probably need an hour, whereas a GP may probably need only about 10 minutes. So those are the kind of things that we looked at. And then, of course, there is a MCI guide, there is a telemedicine guideline that came out in April, and then a revision that happened in May of 2020. You need to be able to adhere to that. So If you're looking at a platform, it should take into account all of these. And of course, the big one that I think you were kind of alluding to, which was the privacy of what is there between the doctor and the patient. That stays only with them. We don't have any access to it because it is completely encrypted. And so that's really what it has. So what it allows you is the ability to look at a doctor's slots. The doctor kind of provides the link to the patient. So this is not a platform where you could go and search for a doctor. So if let's say that Dr. Dubey was here and you were a patient of hers, she would give you a link saying, this is my virtual clinic. And you could go and check on over here. You don't need to come all the way to my place. This also allows that if you have patients who are remote, who are traveling overseas, or other which wise, you could allow for all of that to come in. And in many of the cases, what you have is you have children who are overseas, their aged parents are over here. The aged parents are not necessarily very comfortable with technology. So you need to also allow for things like a three-way consult. And things like those are what we've started building in. And given that we are seeing the pandemic lifting off now it has moved to beyond teleconsult. We are looking at it also for offline consults where you can build an electronic health record for the patient. So long answer to a short question. I hope it gave you what you were looking for.
Yeah, exactly. Even I was wondering on, the privacy and who is the one who's posting all of it. I understand as a third party hosted with you providing the platform. How wonderful, thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Lekha. Was there anything else for me that you had, Ekta? Was there any other question that you had?
There was one, somebody, Mr. Ravindra had shared some insight actually, was not exactly a question. He mentions, I will just take a moment.
Yeah, I'm just seeing the
Yes.
chat window now.
Hi, there are challenges while using e-LNBs while working. So any thoughts, Mr. Ganesh, quickly on that? We would take it.
It is bang on. There are definitely challenges. And while you have pointed on ELNB, Ravindra, I think this is true for any new system that you pick up. And especially if you're going to more once the R&D and plant, and as you get towards validations also, it becomes even more challenging. I think what you really need to do is start working very, very closely with the vendors here and see and align what are the requirements. So even before jumping into a technology, I would think that what makes sense is to kind of do very thorough evaluations as much as you can on what is the kind of package and get the business users aligned very closely with it to say that this is what are the things that we need and have the demos which figure out whether you're able to kind of get there. Despite that, you are still likely to see challenges when you come into implementation, especially in things when integration and so on, which you thought may be straightforward, but doesn't happen the way you would like it. Those are challenges that you see. But for us, if I take our own scenario at Alchem, while we started with ELNB, initially we did have a challenge with one of the vendors. We had changed, and this was about a few years ago before I joined. After I came on, we had taken another vendor on, and that's worked fairly well. The vendor has been very closely aligned with us and has been more of a partner than a vendor, actually. And that has been very, very helpful in getting this to come to life. And most of the cases, what we do, and I'm sure you must be doing the same as well, we start with a smaller group which we can control, learn our lessons quickly from that. If we need to fail, we fail fast. But if we learn our lessons, we learn fast and then roll it across on a larger scale. I hope that helps, Ravindra.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you so much, Ganesha, for sharing your insights and being here. Now, of course, we have Mr. Ganesh. Any questions you can put on the chat box and Mr. Ganesh would take it directly from there. Now, moving on to our next keynote session.
Sorry, just 1 minute before you move ahead. So
yes, sir.
I'll be dropping out another 10 minutes. So if you could put your questions on the chat, I will try and answer them in the next 10 minutes before I drop off. Thank you.
That would be great. Yes, please, everyone, any questions for sir? Please put it there. So now moving forward, we have Mr. Pawan Keman. He's a senior solutions engineer at TigerGraph, and he's here with us to share his insights on empowering pharma with Graph. That's innovation for a better future. So thank you, Pawan, for being with us today. And over to you. Thanks so much.
Sure. Thanks, Ekta. Hello, everyone. I think it's a very good segue. And Ganesh, amazing presentation, actually. At certain points, I was thinking, some of the contents which you actually are showing, I'm just going one level deeper from the same point. So I think it will be very much useful for the audience today, because I think your presentation and my presentation are going to be aligned a lot. So let me just maybe start with the kind of use cases, right? And I can just relate to your initial slide, which when you were building, I think you talked about supply chain procurement, right? Logistics, distribution. You talked about R&D, you talk about basically the marketing spend, right? I think these are definitely some of the key challenges, right? And last 2 years have actually kind of taught everybody, right? Even on a personal level, how much pharma supply chain is kind of integral to everybody, right? Otherwise, typically, I mean, it's just a problem for the farmers. I mean, people who are working in let's say pharma company. But I think everybody at this point knows how much important it is for basically for some of our key medicines which we are actually taking day in day out, right? And COVID has taught that lesson to us. So my presentation would be focused on these three areas, and I'll go one level deeper on how we can kind of make some of these things much more faster, right? And much more agile. I think that is another highlight from your presentation as well, that flexibility and agility is something which is lacking in the current systems, right? And even in the processes. So we need to kind of improve on that for sure. And that is what we have, obviously, all of us have learned actually last 2 years. So talking about this, basically, how does graph analytics actually fits in all this, right? I mean, as per Gartner's prediction, by 2025, 80% of this data analytics, right, would be actually using graph analytics underneath. Graph today, I mean, before I actually talk about this, I need to set the context. Today, I mean, when you actually search on Google, right, internally, it actually fetches all the information using graph. When you are actually connecting on LinkedIn to anybody, right, it's all graph underneath, right, which is working. Similarly for Facebook, right, any searches you are performing, you are opening Wikipedia, for example, and reading some medical document, right, internally, basically the link between the compound you are looking at to the let's say the pharma companies to the kind of symptoms, right, all those are internally linked using a graph technology underneath. So that's my kind of, I mean, starting two statements on graph technology. I'll focus more on basically these three particular use cases and how basically graph technology and analytics can help here, right? So supply chain for sure. I mean, so many areas in the supply chain, right? Starting from supplier risk to basically the logistics and distribution itself. I mean, I'm taking supply chain logistics as a broader area, manufacturing as a broader area. There are so many different areas, and I'll go deeper into subsequent slide, where real-time insights are very important, right? And that's where, I mean, when you're doing a supply chain planning and it's taking like, let's say 2 weeks, 3 weeks, that's not really going to help in the current situation. Things are changing day in, day out. I mean, there are a lot of different, obviously there are pandemics, there are wars, there are so many things going on, right, in the world. And you need to be agile and flexible, right? With your, I mean, with the kind of questions you're asking to the system and how fast it's kind of responding back. Second is the area of drug discovery and repurposing. I think we have all experienced the importance of actually this particular thing in last 2 years, right? I have in my experience, I mean, I basically started working for a pharma company for initial 3 years of my career. That's why it's very kind of interesting and closer to my heart. I think the 10 to 12 years which we are actually kind of taking to build a medicine, right? It's a very expensive process. I think a lot of things can be done there to kind of reduce the expense, obviously, and reduce the number of years, right? And basically, what all we can do there, we will talk about in the subsequent slides, right? And the third area, which is the kind of marketing spend you are actually kind of putting into, or basically how much money you are actually spending, the kind of sales territory alignment, for example, right, for your medical representatives. Now, these things are very mature in US, but many of our pharma companies in India obviously have businesses in US, right? So it makes a lot of sense to even focus and talk about this, right? So basically understanding your prescribers or HCOs, right, in a much more greater detail, and the relationship between those, right? I mean, key opinion leaders, obviously very important for pharma companies, right? The kind of events they are doing, locations where it's happening, where are your basically medical representatives who are actually tied to a particular region, specialty products, all these are different entities which needs to be related together. And that's where graph actually comes into picture. So let me just move forward a bit. And yeah, I mean, obviously we need to do all this very fast, right? That's what is the key message, that we obviously we cannot really afford the kind of slowness in these areas. I mean, initial first supply chain and drug discovery, for sure, we have to make it much more faster, and obviously marketing, because I mean, obviously we have competition, right, to deal with. So in the pharma supply chain area, I mean, obviously there was a massive disruption and companies even had to switch their product lines. Now, I have to focus on X tablet more versus Y tablet. What are those key? I mean, what is basically the commit level of the key suppliers, right? I have, and what are the next level of suppliers I can actually talk to if I have to get my ingredients on time, right? To actually deliver, if I have to scale from, let's say, X to 10X for a particular medicine. Now, those kind of answers have to be answered much more faster in the current situation, because obviously we are dealing with life and death here, right? And basically this agile, I mean, what is this agile way of dealing with huge amount of data, right? And obviously we have regulations to deal with, right? So with all this, how can I have a scalable system, right? Which can manage like thousands of different product lines, products, suppliers, right? Alternate suppliers, alternate products, alternate ingredients, and brings you that kind of visibility in real time sense, right? Where you actually ask a question and you get the response much more faster versus asking somebody to find the information, and then after finding the information you join the information, right? And then you create a view. So that's where the graph analytics part comes into picture. Now, graph analytics is a different way of storing data itself, where you bring in all data from all these different places and store and break the silos, basically put into one single system. And it's typically 100 times much faster than the traditional approaches, right? And it can help in so many different areas of supply chain. I mean, for example, I talked about supplier risk calculation, for example, or even logistics distribution, finding the shortest path, or where should you put your distribution center, for example, right? So there are a lot of core capabilities within graph, and we have some algorithms which actually can tell you that, okay, this is the central location, right, where you should actually put your distribution center, for example. This is the shortest path, basically, right? So all those are very, I mean, academic graph algorithms which are present, and there are a lot of people who have started using it and adopting it because they understand the value of these algorithms now. So some of our customers have moved their supply chain plannings from 3 to 4 weeks to 35 minutes, right? And that is the kind of scale or the kind of agility we are talking about here. Now, coming to the last, coming to the second use case, right, which is drug discovery and repurposing. Now, this is the complex process, and this is like a completely different domain from obviously within your organization. You have supply chain as completely separate thing, and you have R&D and you have marketing, right? So I've taken one use case from each of these. So drug discovery and repurposing obviously takes a lot of time, and you actually go through a lot of these standard medical publications, a lot of different journals, right? And you extract information out of it, study it. It takes a lot of time, right? Basically, that's what we are saying. How can we help there to bring all this information together and put into a standard system, which can actually help the humans or the machines to actually kind of understand it much more faster. This is one of the kind of a blog which is written by one of the key people in this particular domain. And what they have done is they have used basically publicly available medical information and have loaded that into a graph platform. And this is how it looks, right? When we say graph platform, it actually can bring in all the information, relate the information together, and gives you that kind of real-time querying capability, right? Which can go to like billions of different information points, right? And extract the information, synthesize that information, and give you much more faster drug discovery timelines, right? So because for many companies, obviously, if you go through one of the cycle of this whole 10 to 15 years exercise, the first exercise is actually going through all these different kind of information available, right, in either published patents, right? And you kind of combine and build a model around it, right? And so that you understand, and then you build a hypothesis, and then you kind of predict that, okay, there is an inference between X compound and X kind of, let's say, a patient, right? Now, that's where TigerGraph or a graph platform can kind of relate all this information and accelerate this whole, at least, information synthesis activity, right, to start with, so that you can actually kind of achieve some of these things much more faster. Coming to some of these points, right, like what are some of the core capabilities, right, which you can actually use for using a graph platform. So we have things like community detection, right? So finding similar kind of, let's say, compounds, similar kinds of patients or targets, right? You kind of want to put into your R&D cycle, for example. Centrality, right? What is that key kind of compound, which is very important, or key, let's say, any key activity, right? Within a certain group of, let's say, compounds or chemicals, right? Whatever it is, and the classification. And you basically, you can run some of these standard algorithms combined with your AI, right? AI models, and based on that, you can answer a lot of questions, right? That I mean, why a particular compound works on a subset of patient. Now you can always go back to the graph and justify it. If you just rely on AI is, many a times it's not explainable, right? And with graph, even when you combine with AI, it becomes explainable, because you can always go back and just click, 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 and browse and see, okay, yeah, this is the reason, this is how it's related. So that's why it works on these kind of patients, right? So it's much more easier to even explain, right? Much more faster. You can actually find drug resistance, obviously, how safe is the drug, efficacy, and these kind of things, right? Using drug discovery. Now, the third aspect I want to talk about, and this is, I mean, basically the last use case I would actually cover, is something which I myself implemented when I started with Pharma, is basically building that 360 view of anything, right? Like, let's say, prescribers or hospitals or clinics, and how you relate all this together, because end of the day, all this information is available in your different systems, right? And you need to know all this information to do a proper customer segmentation, right? Or proper targeting or proper sales alignment for your MR folks, because obviously you are spending a lot of money on basically these doctors, and giving samples, and a lot of events and other things. So you want to have a very controlled uh, spend, right? On basically on certain doctors based on their specialties, and you want to target a certain specialty. For example, you know that, okay, this specialty, these are the doctors, right? And this is the region, and this is where I want to focus on, and this is the MR who should be working on it, and this is the sample he has given to him, XYZ. So this is all related information, and it's very relevant to actually have this on a graph system, because that's what we do. We actually kind of find relationships, right? That's basically a graph platform does, right? It finds and stores information upfront, so that you don't have to actually, when you are asking the question, you don't have to really do a lot of joins and combination of information. Basically, we actually upfront do all that activity and have it right handy, so that you can run many of these things in like seconds, right? So this is what I wanted to kind of talk about. Now, a bit of background on TigerGraph. I mean, basically, we are a Redwood City, California-based company. Uh, we are an enterprise scale graph database, which is typically like 40 to 300 times faster than the competition. And we support OLTP and OLAP. If people who are aware of obviously these terms, I'll not probably go into it. And we have basically customers, large customers in lot of different areas of healthcare, financial. For example, we have 8 out of top 10 banks using us for fraud detection and those kind of things, right? Very similar to even drug, I mean, repurposing or drug discovery. End of the day, you build that knowledge graph, and using that knowledge graph, you can actually solve any of your use case, right? But what I have highlighted is a couple of key use cases, which obviously a lot of customers are actually trying to do. For example, many customers are actually using us for cybersecurity, where they bring in data from login data and access information and everything into one single place, into TigerGraph, and they are actually kind of they have built a real-time kind of alerts on top of it. So very quickly, this is my closing slide. I'll just build the slide very quickly. So we focus on distributed, we are a distributed graph database. We focus on advanced analytics, right? And we do have a lot of algorithms like community finding common or similar, let's say, compounds, similar suppliers, similar products. We have centrality sort of algorithms, like what is that key ingredient? If that is gone, basically your manufacturing is on halt, right? Those kind of centrality algorithms you can actually run. So there are a lot of in database machine learning capability which we provide, and because of which we have very large scale customers have actually they have taken benefit from our platform. So with that, I would end this presentation. But yeah, I mean, open for any questions, and even in the subsequent panel discussion.
Yeah.
Basically,
Thank you so much, Pawan. Yeah, thank you so much, Pawan, for sharing insights. So, any questions? You can raise your hands and put it to Pawan very quickly. Okay, we have a question from Ravindra Agrawal on the chat box. Can you name some pharma customers and how it helped them?
Sure. So we can only name, some of the open ones which are actually there in public. So we have a European pharma company, and they have actually used us for drug discovery activity. We have United Healthcare, because I can name them. I'm taking their name for basically the member journey sort of thing, right? Where they actually bring in information of, basically a patient, what kind of drug he has taken, what kind of appointments he has actually, what kind of symptoms he has, right? What kind of doctors he has visited, right? So building that whole member journey, and they have the kind of data set to the tunes of like 60 billion records, right? And there are 23,000 call center people who are actually when they're talking to customer, this is in front of them, where they can actually see the whole member journey, right? And based on that, they can actually suggest the next best action for that particular patient. So we have a lot of such use cases, which is currently in production, right, with a massive scale.
Okay. One question from Amit Mustagi. Any use cases from drug discovery, Pawan? Any
Sure.
thoughts on that?
So yeah, so I was talking about the European company, and the example I talked about, right? Basically, it's very similar to that. So they are actually using us for drug discovery process.
Okay. Thank you so much, Pawan, for sharing your thoughts. And of course, now any questions you can put on the chat box, because we have an interesting set of speakers into the panel discussion who are going to share lovely insights. Thank you, Pawan.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. So yes, now moving to a very interesting part of the webinar, which is the last part, that's lessons learned from COVID-19 and the path forward. A very interesting panel discussion, and happy to introduce our speakers. We have Mr. Atul Suri, Vice President and SBU Head, Alembic Pharmaceuticals. We have Mr. Rahul Borse, Head IT with RPG Life Sciences. Ms. Lekha Satish, Innovation and Internal Excellence Lead, Asia AstraZeneca. We have Mr. Anshu Verma, Head and Director, External Manufacturing, Jubilant Life Science Limited. And happy to invite a moderator on board, Mr. Kushal Bansali, Country Manager, India with TigerGraph. Thank you all the thought leaders today for being with us today. And over to you, Kushal, now with the interesting set of speakers.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ekta. Are you going to set up the screen? Because I can see many names there.
Yeah. Now, can you see all the speakers are highlighted on the spotlight?
One sec, I'm just checking.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Sanjay might join a little late because of the network issue. I'm not sure on that, but yeah, we have all 4 speakers.
No problem. So thank you so much, Ekta. At first, thank you so much for setting this up, and all the panel speakers. Thank you so much for taking time out. And lovely audience, you have been very interactive, and I can see the questions coming up, and pretty interesting questions. We have already covered 2 sessions by now. One is Ganesh, and second came from Pawan, and I could see similarity into that. And so that confirms that the challenges what we are talking about. And from a function perspective, though Pawan covered 2-3 only, but Ganesh covered larger one, and he comes from that background. So I'm sure the technology, if you're really looking at the impact of technology, and especially these times, the coverage is there, and all the departments are equally impacted. But at the same time, this is an opportunity for all the departments to take the benefit. And as we were discussing on some other panel, in earlier days, basically when we were talking about the technology, we had the time at our disposal, and we had our process. We used to plan, and we had a chance to fail actually. And no wonder when Ganesh was talking about majority of the automation, the projects failing, because we had the luxury of failing. Though it's not a good thing, but yeah, we had the luxury of failing. We could have done it again. But if you really look at the current scenario, especially the COVID impacted situation, the situation has changed. We don't have a chance to fail. We have to succeed. That is one. And especially when we look at your industry, that is more important because you deal with lives, right? So you are already always on your toes, but yeah, this time you are cornered, right? And we have to ensure that the projects you work upon are successful. And we have a good distribution of roles here. I could see sales, I could see innovation coming. Lekha comes from there. I can see IT representation there, supply chain. So it's a wide variety, and that's good because those are the areas where technology is playing important role. So we can start with this panel very quickly. What we can do is basically just to make the life easier, we can go for a quick round of introductions. We can go alphabetically name with Atul. Like it or not, you will be always the first one, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've had this problem ever since school, but since you said alphabetically, AS comes before AAT, so obviously O to Anshu first.
So
you can't get me there.
Yeah, so you can start possibly a quick round of introduction. We'll give minute and a half to everyone. And apart from your basic introduction, we would love to know one case where technology has impacted personally, professionally. You see impact on your life very quickly. This is just
okay. Okay, Anshu, you can start.
Okay, so so my name is Anshu Verma, and I'm working as head and director for external manufacturing with Jubilant Generics Limited, and my head office is in Greater Noida, but I'm currently working, still from Mumbai. So that itself is a, you can say it's a blessing in disguise, you can say, or it's an impact of technology that you can have your head offices, you can have your corporate offices at some other place in some different part of the country or in the world, but you can these days you can work from anywhere with equal efficiency. So I am in all having around more than 2 decades of experience, and I previously worked with organizations like Teva, where I was leading the external manufacturing and project management function. Before that, I was with Hikma Pharmaceuticals for 3 years. I was with Pfizer. I was with Sandoz. And my first organization with which I started my career, it was Ranbaxy, erstwhile Ranbaxy, which is now Sun Pharma. So technology, I mean, since last 2 years, I have seen a lot of changes, particularly the way in which these days organizations are working. And I particularly deal with my two domains are, you can say the expertise are project management and external manufacturing. So now I could feel that because of all this, these learnings which we have learned in last 2 years, most of the things can be managed in a much different way. I won't say that, okay, it's better or worse, but we can manage it in a much different way than what we were, thinking, or, in a typical conventional or traditional way. I handle with a lot of suppliers. I talk whole day with a lot of vendors and all. So everything is changed now in last 2 years. So maybe we can have a discussion afterwards also. But Atul, now it's your turn.
Yeah, all right. Thank you so much. So I'm Atul Suri. I have a very funny career graph. Kushal was mentioning it when we spoke recently. So I was with the Indian Army for more than 2 decades, 23 years and a few months to be precise. And I wasn't in the medical corps like a lot of people in the pharma industry would assume. I was in the fighting forces, the armored corps, the ones with the tanks that get out during battle, the very first thing. And you're seeing it on the TV these days in Ukraine. I did, after those 23 odd years, transit by default and definitely not by design to corporate. I was invited to sort of set up and lead the leadership development initiatives of Alembic Pharmaceuticals, where I still 7 years later currently am. But that I just did for a year or so. They got me to lead the HR teams, the corporate communication teams. And for the last 4 years, I've been into sales and marketing. I lead 6 business divisions of our company, essentially in the cardiovascular, anti-diabetic, as also gynecology space. So that's where I am. And to answer Kushal's the second question of technology that touched you, let me first take you back to my army days, being a tankman. The single technology that actually redefined everything for everybody was the advent of night vision devices. It just changed the way battles were fought all over the world. But I know this is a discussion on pharma and technology and AI. So therefore, my answer to that is this is an experience that I've had at the start of the pandemic, where like how Ganesh Ramachandran had said earlier, that the sales and marketing and the distribution piece suddenly just took to digital. All of us just jumped on the bandwagon, quite similar to people who are familiar in Bombay, the other station to, probably jump into the 511 local or something like that. You found pharma sales force trying to get onto the bandwagon of digital. And I'll talk more of that a little later. Vishal.
Thank you so much, Atul. And, thank you for your service. I forgot to say it tomorrow. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
We'll move to, I think, Lekha is next.
Hello, thank you. I lead AstraZeneca's innovation, internal excellence and automation for Asia Pacific region. So that includes 9 markets, excluding China, which is kind of a region in itself for us. So I just been with healthcare in the last 1.5 years. Mostly been in consulting and with KPMG for large part of my career. So still trying to understand the nuances and all the shortcuts and the acronyms that all the doctors in the organization using. So every day it's Google is open on the one window to see what is the molecule they're talking about. So it's been an interesting journey. As you said, well, what is the impact or what is the digital impact? If you say, I joined AstraZeneca in 2020, and so far I've never gone to the office. I have not met any of my colleagues across the 9 markets, but we have hosted innovation seminars across 14 regions, even including Mexico and MEA. We have had, I've had rolled out programs which has impacted more than 30,000 patients and touched more than to 15 to 20,000 HCPs. So that's all not going through the Bangalore commute and traffic. I mean, this is a wonderful transformation for a working mother.
So you did answer it, in a perfect way, the impact of this whole thing, technology on you. So I think that's a lively example of that. I will move to Rahul. Yeah, Rahul.
Yeah. So hi Kushal and remaining participants. Good afternoon. So myself Rahul Borse. I am carrying 18 years of experience in IT. So starting from ZSK Dila, then Glenmark, and then Lupin, and then now in RPG Life Sciences, I'm heading IT over here since last. So after my introduction, so the specific question is what is the technologies impacted in your personal professional life is. So you name it, the technologies. So needless to say that IoT technologies, name it is your your all technologies, for example, Teams, Zoom. So naming any technology, it is impacted positive or negative in your life, personal or I would say professional life. So in a positive way, technology improved your communication, right? In another way, it decreased your privacy. Right. In another way, I would say it has given the flexibility for your working the way now Anshu is working from the Mumbai or anywhere you can connect anytime. So technology given is the flexibility of working and flexibility of event. Right. Another side, in a personal life, I would say it has given the accessibility of the shopping. You go anywhere and technology given the shopping, go into the shopping, take no need to go into the physical buy anything. Or I would not say anything. Many things now you can buy online. So that is a benefit, or I would say there is a pro or cons or positive or negative views of the technology, which is impacted in your personal or your professional life. So in professional life, I would say technology impacted very, very much positively. So imagine if we would have not have the Teams or Zooms, how will we manage the shows? We will meet the people, right? So yes, in professional way, technology impacted very positively, very influencing one. In personal life, there are the some pro and cons, but yes, that is manageable. Second I think actually Kushal has been, so second I would like to add is the approach towards the technology, or whether we would like to put technology, or where will we have any technology adoption, where would I would like to put in terms of the technology adoption. So in terms of the technology adoption, Kushal, I would like to put into the early bird, right? So, and risk taker. In terms of the IT, it's a risk taker. So in IT, you should always take the risk. In that term, for example, in my area, in pharmaceutical sector, nobody is now taking the risk of the putting SAP on cloud. So I would like to take SAP on cloud as an early bird in particularly in my sector of pharmaceutical. So third question, which I would like to, the third answer of the question is the view on the new technologies. So what is my view on the new technologies? There are a lot of technologies available, so needless to say that. So, but in coming days, I would say technologies which will impact, or which will get bridges more in new technologies in area of cyber security and cloud technology, right? So initially, there 5 to 10 years back, cloud technology was new one, costliest one, and the people are not ready to take the risk. But if you see in the next 10 years, cloud technology will put up a very impact, and people will ready to take the any cloud computing or cloud related projects will be the journey for the next 4 to 5 years, I would say.
Sure.
Yes, cyber security. You would put any application in infrastructure nowadays. Cyber security will play important role, and in terms of the technology, cyber security will play the crucial role. Right, end of the day, your infrastructure, your things, your everything, your organization should be a safe one. So that will be the prime focus for the area organization. I will not take as a prime, but any technology will focus on that technology. And obviously, machine learning and artificial intelligence will take its space in pharmaceutical, because pharmaceutical is the very regulated environment. It is very we can directly not the like other automotive or other industry. We put the technology, and next 20, 50, 30 days you start going live. No, in pharmaceutical, design development is the crucial one. It takes its own time, but after design development and testing, validation take its own time, right? And then SOP, training, and then go live, right? So artificial intelligence, machine learning will be the use cases into the pharmaceutical technology, in the pharmaceutical industry, but it will take its own time to take the pace and to start. So that's it from my side.
Got it. Thank you, Rahul, for covering few extra points here. We'll quickly say hello to Pawan so we can complete the introduction round.
Sure. Hello, everyone. So I'm currently into TigerGraph, obviously, as you know. But the interesting thing I can tell about myself is, as I said, I started with a pharma company in the beginning, right? And I did couple of implementations. I definitely like the domain, and over a period of last 14, 15 years, I've been into data management space more or less. So, and in and out, I've been working on a lot of different pharma solutions over a period of time. And it's definitely a very interesting space. From my point of view, I think Rahul, you mentioned that AI will obviously take some time. And obviously, I also think so. In supply chain, for example, AI is picking up. Marketing and spend management, probably AI is there already, right? So I think there are different areas, and AI is picking up differently in all these different areas. But I think at the end of the day, I mean, we have to go there as it has happened with cloud, as you very rightly said, because I mean, I can imagine like 5, 6 years back. I mean, even I was apprehensive. Who would put prescriber data on cloud, for example, right? Or but I think people have started doing that, and they have figured out a way to do that, right? And I think now we are into that stage where both of these technologies, like cloud and obviously machine learning and AI, is going to kind of really, I mean, sorry my language, but rock the world basically, right? So it's really going to kind of change the way we are actually doing things, scale to a massive level, right? Be it marketing, be it R&D, right? So we don't have to be limited by 12 years. I mean, we have proven that, right? Very recently, we can actually make things faster if we really want it to, right?
Yeah.
So I think many of these technologies are going to help there.
Great. Thank you, Pawan. And thank you so much, everyone, for a quick round of introduction. And as we move forward, we all have been talking about the technology impact, and I'm sure we all have attended many panels there. I don't want to make it the very standard discussion here. Let's talk about something different. So I'm sure technology adoption is required. You have various areas, as Ganesh very nicely covered. Few of the areas I was not focusing that much, but he explained very nicely. So I'm sure every department is impacted and they can take the benefit of technology. Though Rahul answered it as his introduction, but very quickly, another round robin where when you look at technology, there is no deny that technology is needed as of today. But when you look at technology adoption, basically in for personally as well as in your companies, based on your experience with the company, how do you see yourself and your company in terms of how do you take technology, projects? It's you would love to go more like followers, where you see people to do something, see that how are they doing, and once it is proven, you want to jump on that, or basically you take it head on and say that let me do this. What approach you usually love to take?
Again,
yeah, please.
All right.
Yeah,
so we stick to the same round robin. See, it is fashionable to say that we are the trendsetters, or we are the early adopters or adapters, or whatever you want to call it. But the fact of the matter is, and before we talk of the company or we talk of myself as a professional, I think as an industry, and I think Rahul had very correctly articulated towards the end of his talk, that pharma has been the slowest, and for very, very valid reasons. I mean, because you're touching lives, and therefore you have to be absolutely certain not just to adapt to adopt, but also to absorb the technology. Only once you're totally with it can you actually scale it up and see the value that there is within that. And like how Ganesh Ramachandran had very clearly stated, sales and marketing within the Indian domestic pharma space has been the slowest to adopt it. Going for the traditional visual aids, people walking, waiting hours on end for a doctor for a 30-second look there and stuff like that. So as far as my own company is concerned, I think we've again, it was all thanks to COVID that we quickly, got into a huddle, but we were able to board the bus amongst the first few within the industry. And and the good part is, and I keep talking of these AAAs of technology, not just adopt, adapt, but absorb. And I think now the field, and let's see who the field force is in Indian pharma markets. It's a young medical representative, 23, and like it or not, a lot of people hate me for saying this, but it's amongst the last career options today for a person to become a medical rep. That's the guy who we are talking of, but that's the guy who's now seeing the benefit in all of this. And that's not all. What we actually have and where we can leverage technology, analytics more than technology, data analytics, is what even Ganesh spoke of in the passing, is data in itself. And in that, especially secondary data, stockist level data, today we are able to sort of do it. Of course, many companies are doing it, have been doing it on a slow, boring Excel format. But today, thanks to, I'm sure, like people like TigerGraph, we'll be able to sort of, get it going much faster, far more relevant, far more pointed, to give the correct and actionable nudges to the field. And I do not know if there's going to be more of this conversation, but there are a few more points which I'll probably bring up subsequently, not wanting to hog the entire limelight here. Thank you, Kushal.
No, we'll have another round of questions and we'll cover that. Anshu, you want to go next?
Yeah, Kushal. So I think, as I earlier mentioned, so I had been into project management since in many organizations. So I was actually doing a lot of work which was directly related with technology, and where you actually not require the physical presence and all, like the project management tools And in my previous organization, we were using the PLM. I think Rahul would be definitely aware about it. The PS Next and PLM for the for the project tracking and all. And so the entry points for any project, for any tracking the progress and all, those were multiple. So when a particular project or a program, it used to get over at any particular function level, say at R&D level. So there were the entry points at R&D. There were the entry points at my end at project management. There were the entry points at supply chain level once the the project is over and we were in the stage of commercial launching it and all. So that helped a lot. Without and if you are effectively and properly managing a project tracker in softwares like these PS Next and PLM, and of course even you can modify. Not all organizations needs to have these sophisticated systems, but even properly, if you are using MSP also up to an extent, I mean, you can minimize your times in physical meetings, in discussions, in phone calls, and if you are just making a routine that you are properly and timely updating your charters, everybody is aware, everybody is updated. But the only takeaway which I got is, you have to routinely and religiously update it. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it makes
sense. So Anshu, that is a very important point that you are making here is, in the market, there are many tools are available. You name it, tools are available. MSP, ABCD, XYZ. But thing is, adoption is more important in doing, right? Task which is assigned to Rahul Borse has to go and mention that which is completed 20%, 30%, 40% has to be completed by Rahul only. Absolutely. No technology will come and will, you put artificial intelligence, machine learning, no technology will complete your stable same task. Rahul Borse is supposed to mention 20% or 40%. So technologies are there, but human intention and the crucial is your adoption. Correct. No, it's my duty. End of the day, put the stack of the. I'm giving the example of your case only, PLM, right? I've given the multiple solutions to the users, but thing is, project manager are updating their task, but the task assigned to the person is not updating their task. So that is collapsing overall concept of the technology.
Right. And many times it happens, Rahul, you would have noticed that the person who is managing the project or who is tracking the overall progress or who is presenting it, so one has to sometimes, like I did it many times, that I had to contact the concerned persons and functions that it looks like this particular milestone or this particular activity is still not updated. Right. So and that is linked with other activity, and it is not getting updated because you have not updated it. Right. So I mean it has to be, people have to imbibe this thing within themselves, that Correct. That if they have adopted a technology, an automated technology, then they have to use it.
Sure. Adoption has to improve.
So I think very valid point, and that's why whenever we talk about the success of these projects, we always say the technology, people, and process, right? All three have to be in place. Any of these not falling in place will always result into the failure of the overall project. So that's I think it's a bigger topic to discuss. We'll have I'm sure we'll get opportunity someday to talk about it. But right now we were talking about the way you take on these technologies. Lekha, you have any views on the type of person you are or the companies you work? How do you embrace these technology? Because we are saying there is no two thoughts about it, that you have to embrace the technology, but how do you do it? You wait, or you go head on and take it?
Yeah, you're right. There is no choice. Now IT digital is an integral part of the function. But the choice, or at least you end up mimicking your organizational culture when it comes to the risk appetite in this. Typically, what I've observed, and it's the same true for AstraZeneca too, it varies from the department to department in a sense. So if it is something to do with our research, our clinical trials, we can be a bit more aggressive. We can put in the best technology and even go innovative, because that's the kind of funding, budgeting, and it's an internal, intake. So those places, the risk is maybe we are even leading, we are following the science in those places. But
Right.
when it comes to something like a patient-facing thing or HCP, then it is more of compliance first and then the technology next. And then typically a commercial arm tends to be risk aversive. And if whenever I build a business case, if it is any patient touching one, the top ones follow with the regulatory compliance, then the audit trials, and finally comes the patient impact. So you really become the laggard in those cases.
Got it. So that thank you so much. So I think there is no two thought again on when we're talking about the technology, and especially in the industry you are in, you are touching lives, right? Though you have to act fast, but at the same time you have to be cautious, not taking the technologies without the proper, evaluation, or you doing the proper analysis before you take them, because it could impact you adversely. And you are in a business where you have to go fast, but you have to go safe on that, right? You can't just drive rashly in that direction. Now, one thing which coming out very clearly in this whole thing is there are many dimensions when you talk about technologies, and we just heard Anshu and Rahul talking about, and now Lekha talking about the areas where you can't help and you need people to fall in line, follow processes, follow discipline, will do that. But at the same time, one thing is which is becoming very common in all these technologies, and especially in these last 2 years, thanks to COVID, the positive side is a lot of data is coming in. Data was always there, but now there is more data. As Anshu said, I'm sitting in Mumbai. What you're doing is you're actually adding a lot of data. When you used to go to office, you used to talk to people directly. Now, when you use your machine to interact with people, so Microsoft Office 365, it generates so much data. Now there are people doing analysis on that, and they can create profiles for users. How do they behave? To whom they talk, what do they talk, when do they talk, type of thing. So I think we're generating the data. And when we talk about data, how do we take the benefit? And that is the actually core of today's discussion, where we are talking about how do you connect the data, how you analyze, and how do you learn from it. That is very important, the learn part. And AI, machine learning, we all keep touching those topics into that. So when Pawan very nicely tried giving one example of drug discovery, supply chain, I think 2-3 areas. If time permitted, he could have actually covered more, use cases there. But when we look at the technologies like graph, databases, graph analytics, what's your take, Atul, on how do you see graph helping your function, actually, the areas you touch?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm accountable for sales and distribution to some extent. And where do I see graph coming in? If it could address a major pain point, while data is fine, collation of data is fine, analysis of data is fine, actionable nudges are fine. What is it that I'm actually looking for beyond all of this is real-time information. It's okay to collect data over 1 month and the business excellence team pulls out some stuff. I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, and I understand the challenges of pharma. It's huge. There's so many chemists. It's under-regulated. You have stockists, you have sub-stockists, you have a field force that is willing to, play with stocks and things like that. It's quite a mess, really. I'm looking forward to the day when there is a strip of a particular medicine, let's say in the back of Beyond, or even in a metro in Bombay, that has moved out from the counter of a chemist. I get real-time data on my computer sitting here. Batch-wise, I know exactly what has moved out, what are the things getting near expiry. Can I do an inter-depot transfer because I see a great amount of product moving out, let's say in Bihar, but it's stagnating in Delhi. Can we then proactively look at it and, then tell the supply chain, move this there, things are not moving. But the basic point, and it's all there, it's all possible. The only problem in the Indian pharma domestic markets is the scale. And while we may all want to think it's extremely organized, but the fact of the matter at the ground level is it's still quite chaotic. That needs to get into order. Technology is there. If if the beverage industry knows, and I was talking to a girl from Bacardi, and she told me very clearly, early in the morning, I know exactly how many bottles of Bacardi Lemon have gone out from a BYOB in Gurgaon. It's as clear as that. That's the clarity as a sales head or as a marketing or an SBU head I look at, so that I can proactively bring in efficiencies in the distribution system, which will obviously have a greater impact on my top line. So that's, and I'm quite sure it can happen.
Correct. Correct. No, it's happening. I don't want to sound like a sales guy on this panel, but the type of use cases we are doing, and especially the point you raised, huge data sets, looking for relationships below because the data is connected.
Yes.
And when you're looking at the analytics real time with artificial intelligence, machine learning, following that. So we have the 8 out of top 10 global banks actually trying to work on the anti-fraud things. Anti-fraud, you understand, money involved, reputational risk for banks, and false positive. You don't want to be stopped as a innocent bank customer, your credit card, because they want to implement stricter credit card.
No, I get your point totally, Kushal, and sorry for interrupting you. Right. It's there. I'm not saying it's not there. And industries like BFSI and all, it's so much simpler and easier because it's organized. Correct. The point is with us, we need to set that house in order to facilitate technology to crank in for better insights and real-time insights for us.
Right. So I think it's a give and take. Possibly we give something to the users with the data which is available as of now. Possibly we are not able to explore that. We do that, and once they see things coming out of that, they will be basically, it could be a barter where they start giving you that discipline. That comes in. Anshu, you want to talk about how you see in your function graph technology type of a newer technology could be useful.
Kushal, I mean, in as I said, most of my work, particularly in external manufacturing and project management, we were luckily quite automated. I mean, a lot of things. I mean, in most of the industries and most of the medium size and big size companies, they have adopted these type of practices. SAP is almost everywhere for data, which and a lot of BI reports. Then these project management tools and your discussions with suppliers, but some of the basic things like I do a lot of agreements with suppliers and for contract manufacturing for within India, outside India also. Earlier there used to be a lot of meetings and discussions and hard copies, but nowadays everything everything is done through digitally. You can sign it digitally, and deals worth of millions of dollars and all, you can everybody has accepted it, I would say, as it is. I mean even the I would say some of the tough departments which are considered in organizations like legal and finance, they have also accepted these terms like okay, digital copies and electronic copies are okay to move ahead.
I think COVID actually pushed all of us into the corner, and this survival.
I get all the invoices from my vendors, from my suppliers, when they complete the milestones or when they dispatch the product and all. It's all electronic invoices which are processed in the system. Earlier, I remember 2.5 years before, it was different. When you ask for payment, they used to say आप पहले invoice मंगवाओ, hard copy मंगवाओ, I need hard copy, and then only I will process the payment. But nowadays, these things are very, not rare, but everybody has come to the terms.
Right. I hear you, Anshu. Rahul, you want to add to the newer technology like graph? How do you see helping you? So, for example, you touched upon the cyber defense, for example, like your industry, your IP is the most important thing for you, right? How do you ensure that your assets are safe? So, do you see the use cases around drug discovery we spoke about? The supply chain we spoke about, cyber defense? You think fraud again, it's a big thing for pharma as well. Do you see those areas, graph type of technologies play a role? What's your experience on that?
Yeah, so what I have seen the demo, demonstration of from the Pawan, I we understood that you have the platform to machine learning and the artificial technology, right? So it is an opportunity to Tiger Graph to, in the area of the your organization's assets management and asset security, right? So many tools in the market are available. So so Tiger Graph can help us to the organization in terms of uh, 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 assets, for example, to machine learning technology. Any virus or anything is get detected over the machine or server or any your firewall, Tiger can help not only inform but proactively take action,
Right.
and after taking the action inform to the particular administrator. So that cycle has to get completed. I have seen the many security applications are available. They actively reactively take parts into, they detects the virus or detects the file or detects the things, but detecting and then proactively detecting and then acting on it, so it should not get spread to the other asset or other
Correct.
thing.
Correct. So I think you raised a very valid point. So we are talking about three things. One is detecting. Second is thinking about or coming up with the right resolution for that. What should be done that time, which is the next best action, and then definitely acting on that. Acting is easier because once you know what action to be taken, that is where machine learning and things.
And spreading, it should not spread.
Yeah,
Before spreading.
That's basically remediation. If you can think about a remediation best action, then implementing that is very easy. There are tools which you can just fire the order and they can do that. So I think we can do that. Lekha, you have any addition to what we just spoke about, the new technology like graph you see in how it can help your function?
So in this case, I concur with what Mr. Atul was telling. Um, when it is an internal thing like drug discovery or a clinical trials data, we have the data in a standard manner. We can put in the best of analytics, and that's an arm in itself. But when you look at the other way around, we are still have a legacy that contracts are done without any data standardization or data sharing in them, and each market and every function is in a very disparate condition. Getting the data and data cleansing is still the first step for us. Big data and using it is far-fetched dream as of now. It's going to be another 2-3 years before even our e-pharmacy partners come to that level.
Correct. We hear you. That's a good point, Lekha. I can see a question. The Amol has raised the hand. Amol, you want to ask the question?
Thank you for taking my question. Actually, my question is to Rahul sir. And first of all, I would like to just really say hi to Rahul sir, because I am meeting him after 2 years or something, because I have worked with Rahul sir in my previous organization, and I really admire Rahul sir to one of the particular topic which just now has prop up in this training, that which is Anshu also has been raised, that the implementation of the project. So as a user, I must say any project needs some proper plan, and whatever the Rahul sir has been said. So for that particular session, that particular thing, I really must say Rahul sir is very, very expert in that, and I really admire Rahul sir for that. So, linked to that question, yeah, sir. And linked to that questions, so I have one question like as a user, while implementing any IT project, there is what we found a major gap is like to make any project in pharma for a regulated market. It requires a 21 CFR Part 11 compliance, and many of the newcomers or new entrants, digital companies are maybe nowadays the awareness has been gone up to the next level, but maybe I feel that there is a lacuna between the bridging of the IT companies and the pharmaceutical user. So I would like to take some expertise from the Rahul sir. So how to bridge this gap between the IT company and the user? So to bridge a gap of 21 CFR compliance, sir.
Yeah. So thanks, Amol. Because of short of time, I will take it very quickly. Kushal, sorry, he's my old user, and thank you very much.
I'm happy. I'm happy. Amol is happy meeting you. At least.
so he's my old user, and has just sitting my long back relation. So he just overwhelmed and asked the question. So Amol, your point is absolutely valid, and so your question was to technologies which you are putting into the area or any area, for example, in manufacturing. It is very essential and crucial that we should, emphasize, or we should proactively take action about the compliance, right? So, but unfortunately, what happens, on many applications, when we choose or we select that time, there are the multiple factors: cost, its experience, where they put into the reference check, and its compliance towards the like, for example, 21 parts safe for relevant compliant and all. So when you choose any technologies or any applications, so we sometimes takes the cost as the matter, or reference check key, some another companies implemented, we take, or big cost that we implement the technology. And then in that case, sometime that 21 parts in a particular case or particular part is not get implemented, and that is impacts the user. Right. So in that case, agility in the particular application is very important, right? So as usual, I'm putting any technology into the new environment. So that application should agile, should provide the solution with agility to the user, or for example, you was particular part is missing, which is audit requirement, that can be added as an amendment into the particular application, whether it is a patch or it is a version management, but it should get added. If that agility is not there, then as an IT, we have very limited involvement. For example, in SAP, I have all the resources available in my organization, so I can take any requirement and make you things ready by 10 or 15 days. If it requires 10 days, I will take it into 15 days. But any application like Spot application, which is not, they are not allowing to changes into their applications, and there agility comes into the picture. In that case, we need to go into the particular application developer and then get it done, right? So yes, point is well taken. I know there are the challenges into the particular manufacturing area. Sometimes application developer or IT does not take directly 21 safer part related compliant, but you see the graph, that graph is going towards the now compliance. And in going forward next 2 to 3 years, definitely that all the majority of the application which we are putting into the manufacturing area will be the compliant with the 21 CFR or whatever part 11B or whatever.
Great. Thank you, Rahul, for answering this question. We have one more question coming from Amit. I'm just taking one more question.
Yes, Kushal, I think we should,
I can say Atul taking some phone calls. I'm not sure he has another meeting after that.
Yes.
Yeah,
so we can quickly wrap up taking one question from Amit, and I think you do the closure. Yes.
Yeah, if this question is not for Atul and he has another commitment, Atul, you can stay back, or?
No, I pushed it by 10 minutes, but I'm happy to listen.
Thank you. Go ahead, Amit.
Yeah, good afternoon, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, I'm from Meridian Life Sciences and I manage the IT here.
Okay.
I wanted to understand, I think with this, Corona hitting all of us, there are a lot of agencies, they used to audit us. I mean, not only the agencies, but the clients. So what do you think, what would be the adoption of virtual audit by agencies and our clients? What do you think about it?
Who would like to answer that? I'm sure I'm not the authority.
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
Can I answer that? Because can you hear me?
Yes, I used to work for Jubilant Biosys earlier.
Wow, good. It's a small world, Amit.
Yeah.
Okay, so I organized a few virtual audits, Amit, in my previous organization, and those were from regulatory bodies. It's a nowadays it's an altogether different set of guidelines which have come from regulatory bodies for virtual audits. you need to have a different. I mean, when I first went through it, it was a good learning for me also. You need to have a different type of conference room. You need to have what type of video cameras, what type of virtual tour they will do, in the plant, and in case if they want to ask any question while doing the virtual tour, so how it can be addressed. So it's all the major regulatory bodies, including FDA, EU, COFEPRIS of Mexico, South Africa, Australia. I mean, they have come up with a different set of guidelines during COVID times for virtual audits, and they're successfully doing it. So if you can just go through the websites and all, now you can get all the details.
Okay, great. Thank you, Anshu, for answering that. So I think we have come to the time was limited, and I'm sure this is an interesting topic we can go. Pawan, you have anything to add?
No, I really enjoyed the discussion, and I just have one final point to make. I think I really appreciate what Atul was saying, right, on basically traceability of the stock, and that is something which, as of now, he desires that should be there. But in US and other places, there are already regulations which are coming out, right, which they have to actually kind of do that. There is no way around it. I think it will be helpful. We have to put our data management in place, basically, right? I think that is the key thing, because we don't know what new regulations are going to hit us, and we have to be ready. Apart from obviously our day-to-day business, what we are doing, I think pharma regulations are definitely, in my opinion, again, I mean, you guys are more expert, are going to come in big time, right? In many of these areas around sales, marketing, obviously stock and these kind of things, supply chain, security act, and those kind of things. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for the point, Pawan. And Atul, you want to say something before we close?
Nothing. I'm just waiting for the day, because nothing like working in a regulated environment, and I'm looking forward to it. Though margins will take a big hit for big pharma. Big pharma will no longer be big pharma, but I think that's the way forward, and I look forward to it really. And I look forward to a lot of help from companies like yours. Really.
Correct. We'll do our best. But I think one thing we covered very clearly here was basically the technology is there. It is there to help you. There is a requirement for technology. Businesses need it, and definitely pharma is no different than that. But yeah, there were some few points about processes, people, but I think they will fall in line, because there will be a time then we will not have an option, and we have to work on that. And that's I think a gradual thing. It will not happen overnight. And I think that will come in, and we can just be ready with the technologies. So I think we are on the right track. Speed may be a little questionable, but I think we'll
as long as it's happening and going to happen, it will happen.
Yeah, it will happen. I think. So thank you so much, everyone, for your time today. And thank you so much for being such a nice, sharing your thoughts, experience, and the way you see, the technology could be useful. I'll hand it over to Ekta. Ekta, you want to close it?
Yes, thank you so much. So we are already running out of time.
I know.
So the interesting session, of course, with lovely set of thought leaders. Again, there was last question from Rajiv Saxena. I really don't like disappointing people when it comes to such engaging forums. We should respect the question. So he's asking something on how does technology helps improving patients' outcome. So very quick, in few seconds, if somebody can just take this over. Any speaker, how does technology helps in improving patients' outcome? Any thoughts on that?
What does he mean by patient's outcome? I mean, does he mean...
Mr. Rajiv, if you can just unmute yourself and explain a little bit. Mr. Rajiv, can you just unmute yourself? He's here, but I don't think he's unmuting. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Rajiv.
Yeah, sure. Well, I was on road, therefore I was just trying to avoid ending, because the observations on network were very interesting webinar. I've understood too. However, pharmaceutical management, we have learned many examples today over here about the comparison of other industries wherein the IT been taking and technology advancement. But my understanding, it's very complex business. It's not B2B, it's B2C and patients directly. When you go to patient directly, it's not possible for pharmaceutical selling. there are doctors, and then of course the agencies involved into the selling those products. The development is on every hourly basis across the geographies on the various therapeutic diseases, and the fulcrum of remain the doctors only who prescribes and understand why to prescribe which medication. And we see the changing guidelines over the period of whether the diabetology, cardiology, oncology, anything, and the guidelines keep on changing. And therefore, I was always understanding that though the invasion of technology into the pharmaceutical field, thanks to COVID, the people are now, reaching out to doctors, patients.
I think we've lost him.
Rajiv, you there? Oh,
Yes, is there? Okay.
Rajiv, you are on mute.
How does? No, I think there is an issue.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
So how does all these things come together, technological advancement, and really help patients' outcome? So that's something we need to discuss about maybe next webinar. We have exhausted time. I'm sorry for being in the end putting up this question, but this is something very important we need to address going forward. How is it going to help patient?
See, in fact, everything, Rajiv, is directed towards the patient only, whether it is drug discovery, whether it's efficiencies in the supply chain, whether it's marketing it to the doctors. It's all got the patient in mind. And there's technology at every stage. But yes, we take your point. It all has to fall in place together to complement each other so that the patient journey is that much more, I can't use the word enjoyable, but that's what we mean. At least there is patient delight in whatever he's going for. And therefore, technology at every stage of the entire supply, not just the same, the entire value chain is going to contribute to that in a very distinct manner.
That's absolutely right. You know what? 873 villages are there in UP. 873 villages are in UP, alone UP state, which is population is larger than UK.
True, I agree. And if they all have Aadhaar cards, there's no reason why digital health technology can't reach them.
So, this is what we need to address. We are talking about technology which is now restricted to only metros and some semi-metro cities. We are not even to reach out to the retailer, the last man in the villages, the Bahraich village. If you go to UP downstairs, there is a RNP practicing, and also I think the conscience is very, very large. And I would compliment the organizer organizing such a program. I think if we can do a little better going forward and discuss about these issues in technological development, reaching out to the patient, possibly will address much more better issues. Thank you.
We'll cover that possibly. Over to you.
Okay. Yes. So thank you. We had interesting questions, of course. So I would not take much time now. Very quickly, want to thank all the thought leaders. Mr. Ganesh is not here. Still, I would like to thank him for taking a wonderful and interesting keynote session. All our speakers, Mr. Atul Suri, Mr. Anshu, Mr. Rahul, and Ms. Lekha, thank you for taking out your precious time. TigerGraph being our associate every time, Mr. Kushal and Mr. Pawan, thank you so much. And to all the audiences, of course, taking out your precious time on Friday evening and staying with us throughout the session. We shall be sharing the entire video by Monday, and also would be reconnecting you to connect with TigerGraph for their interesting sets of solutions they have related to Graph. So once again, thank you everyone, and stay safe and have a lovely weekend ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Pleasure being here.
Bye-bye.